Perhaps the most fundamentally important skill in working with linear equations is the ability to determine an equation for a line given two of its points. Here, we'll take a look at what that process looks like. First of all, keeping the goal in mind is important. Because the slope-intercept equation y equals mx plus b is generally the simplest to work with, that's going to be our goal in this problem. So I'm going to write that at the top of our page, put it in a box, and that's going to be what we strive to figure out. And this problem is then equivalent to determining what is the value of m, the slope, and what is the value of b, the intercept, for the line that we're given, and then filling in those two numbers in my equation to complete my answer. In this example, the line that we're given is the line through the 2 points -2, -1, and 4, 3. We'll start the process of determining the slope and the intercept of this line by first finding the slope, which given 2 points we can do by measuring the rise and measuring the run and dividing the former by the latter. The rise is defined as the difference between the 2 points' y-coordinates. We sometimes call this y2 minus y1 in the formula which defines slope. In our example, let's subtract the y-coordinate 3 of the second point minus the y-coordinate -1 of the first point. The result, 3 minus -1, is 4. That 4 measures the vertical difference between the locations of these 2 points. Next, let's measure the run, the horizontal difference between the locations of these 2 points, by subtracting their x-coordinates, keeping in mind that we need to subtract these x-coordinates in the same order as that which we subtracted the y-coordinates. So when we subtracted the y-coordinates, we took this point with the y-coordinate of 3 to be our y2, and this point with the y-coordinate of -1 to be our y1. As long as we choose that same order in which to subtract the x-coordinates, we'll be safe. So I should be subtracting the x-coordinate of this point, 4, minus the x-coordinate of this point, -2. The result of that subtraction is 6. So, what this is telling us so far is that these 2 points are connected by a rise of 4 and by a run of 6. Thinking in slope language, what that means is that I go from one of these points to the other by running 6 units to the right and rising 4 units up. So what does that make the slope? It's the ratio of the rise divided by the run. So we'll divide 3 minus -1, we'll divide that 4, by 4 minus -2, which is 6. 4 divided by 6 is a fraction which may be reduced into its lowest terms, 2/3, to discover the slope of this line. Now that we know the slope of this line, we can fill in the value of m in the final answer that we're working towards. Now the only thing we don't know in our final answer is the value of b, the y-intercept of this line. To find it, what we need to do is convert the equation that we have, which has 3 unknown quantities in it, x, y, and b, into an equation that only has the one unknown, b, the intercept, that we're trying to find, and then solve that equation to determine what b is. What's necessary to do that is to supply that equation with a value of x and a value of y, which corresponds to a point on our line. In other words, we should plug in any point that we happen to know on our line for x and y, and then solve the resulting equation for b. If I choose the point -2, -1, then that means plugging in -2 for the value of x, plugging in -1 for the value of y, and then solving the resulting equation for b to determine my y-intercept. 2/3 times -2 simplifies to -4/3, and we can get b by itself by adding 4/3 to both sides. It gives me a fraction addition problem on the left-hand side, which comes out to 1/3 as our answer. And we've gotten b by itself, thereby discovering that the intercept of this line is the number 1/3. So we now know b. Our final step is one that's too often forgotten by students in their haste to celebrate having discovered b. The final step is to actually finish writing your final equation. In other words, replace that b in your equation with the number that you just found, 1/3, to complete the picture, giving us our final equation, y equals 2/3 x plus 1/3. So discovering the equation of a line, if we use slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, is a matter of finding the slope and finding the intercept. Find the slope first by using any 2 points on our line and subtracting their y-coordinates, subtracting their x-coordinates, and dividing the result to get the slope. Fill in that slope in your equation. Then, choose any point on the line and plug in that point as your values of x and y into the equation that you're building. It should leave you with only one unknown quantity, b, which you can then solve for to determine that unknown y-intercept. Having discovered b and having discovered m, you now know what your final answer, y equals mx plus b, should look like.